What if ancient history is a lie not incomplete, but deliberately altered? Across the world, clues suggest a forgotten truth. Precision-cut stonework that modern tools can't replicate. A 2,000-year-old device that functions like a computer. Giant skeletons that vanished without explanation. And ancient texts that claim gods descended from the sky. These aren't myths. They're documented mysteries, the ones mainstream history won't touch. From the hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx to the battery found in ancient Baghdad, we'll explore the technologies they say shouldn't exist, like if you've ever questioned the official story. Subscribe to uncover what's been buried. Comment your theory below, it might just rewrite history. 1. The Pyramid Code hidden in plain sight. They've stood for over 400-500 years, massive, silent, immutable. The Great Pyramids of Giza are among the most studied and photographed structures on Earth. But despite centuries of research, there are secrets buried deep in the stones that defy conventional explanation. The mainstream story is simple, built during Egypt's 4th dynasty, by skilled laborers using copper tools, stone sledges, and sheer manpower. It's a testament to human ingenuity, or so we've been told. But when you begin to study the numbers, the measurements, the alignments, a different picture begins to emerge. A picture so precise, so mathematically elegant, it starts to feel less like architecture and more like a message. The alignment. No one can explain. The Great Pyramid of Khufu. The largest of the trio isn't just big, it's perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west. Not roughly, not approximately, perfectly. How perfect. According to NASA's own data, the pyramid is aligned within 3/60th of a degree of true north. That's more precise than the Royal Observatory in Greenwich built with modern instruments. But here's where things get stranger. No records show that ancient Egyptians possessed a compass. They had no known way to measure the Earth's magnetic poles. So how did they align something so massive with such surgical accuracy? Was it coincidence, or was someone or something guiding them? Code embedded in stone. Now let's talk numbers. The pyramid's base measures 230.4 meters on each side. When you calculate its perimeter and divide by its height, you get something chillingly familiar. The number 2p. That's right. The Great Pyramid encodes the mathematical constant pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, a number not formally discovered until thousands of years later. Coincidence, maybe. But it doesn't end there. The pyramid's coordinates 29.97992 dn happen to match the speed of light in meters per second, 299,792,458 ms. A stunning match. Too close, some argue, to be random. And remember, this was built when the official story says humans didn't even understand the concept of a meter. So how could a stone structure reflect the most fundamental constant in physics, ancient blueprint, or alien beacon? Some researchers, fringe academics, independent investigators, and former NASA employees have suggested a chilling possibility. What if the pyramid was never meant to be a tomb? In fact, no mummy has ever been found inside the Great Pyramid. Not a single hieroglyph, not a funerary inscription, just empty chambers, strange shafts, and the silent stone. So what if it wasn't a tomb at all? Some theorists point to the internal layout chambers, precisely proportioned air shafts that align to distant stars, and a base that maps to Earth's equator, and ask, could this have been a signal, a geometric code left for someone else to find? Physicist Nassim Haramein once proposed that the pyramid's geometry isn't just symbolic, it's functional. A model of harmonic resonance potentially capable of channeling or amplifying Earth's natural energies. Others take it further. Erich von Däniken, author of Chariots of the Gods, speculated that extraterrestrials might have designed the structure either as a power station, a navigation marker, or even as a repository of universal knowledge. Far-fetched. Then consider this in 2017. Scientists from the Scan Pyramids project using muon tomography discovered a previously unknown void over 30 meters long, hidden above the Grand Gallery. A chamber no one has entered in over 4 millennia. A chamber that no ancient texts mention. A chamber that as of today remains unexplored. Why? What's in that chamber? And more importantly, who or what put it there? Coincidence or cover-up? You'll hear skeptics say these patterns are just the product of numbers, games, cherry-picked data, and numerological tricks. But skeptics have a funny habit of avoiding one simple question. Why would ancient builders encode the speed of light into a stone monument thousands of years before that number was known? And why does modern Egyptology insist without exception that these are all coincidences, even as new anomalies keep surfacing? Why was the area around the pyramids declared a no-fly zone for drones? Why did the Egyptian government halt foreign exploration just after the 2017 muon discovery? Who benefits from these mysteries remaining unexplored? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The more we study the pyramids, the less they resemble tombs. And the more they resemble machines. Machines built with knowledge that seems frankly out of time. Machines that might have been built not just for us, but for someone watching. And if this structure hides messages encoded in physics, what were the builders trying to tell us or warn us? But the pyramids are just the beginning. Because halfway across the world, buried in desert sands, another relic may contain the spark of ancient power, a relic that, if real, changes everything we know about human history. 2. The Baghdad Battery Ancient Power Source. In 1938, while excavating ruins near modern-day Baghdad, an Austrian archaeologist named Wilhelm König stumbled upon a clay jar unlike anything else in the region. At first glance, it looked like just another piece of pottery from the Parthian period. But when König opened it, what he found defied explanation and sparked one of the most controversial debates in archaeology. Inside the vessel was a copper cylinder suspended around an iron rod sealed with asphalt. It wasn't decorative, it wasn't ceremonial. To König, it looked functional. It looked electrical. And so began the mystery of what would come to be called the Baghdad Battery, an artifact some claim is proof of ancient electricity. A 2,000-year-old battery. Mainstream archaeology dates the object to around 250 BCE, placing it in the hands of the Parthians, a technologically unremarkable society by official standards. But König's analysis was startling. The jar had all the core components of a simple galvanic cell. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or lemon juice, it could potentially generate a low-voltage electric current. Later tests in the 1970s showed the device could produce up to 1 volt of electricity. 1 volt, 2,000 years ago. But why? What would the ancients be doing with primitive batteries centuries before the invention of electric power? That question opens a deep chasm of unsettling possibilities. The shocking possibilities. Some suggest the Baghdad battery was used for electroplating, a method of applying a thin layer of metal to another object using electric current. This would explain why certain ancient artifacts, particularly in the Middle East, appear coated in gold or silver with unusual precision. Others take the theory further. Could this technology have powered low-voltage lighting systems in temples and tombs? Ancient reliefs in Egypt, such as the infamous Dendera light carvings, appear to depict large bulbs connected to serpentine filaments, images often dismissed as symbolic yet eerily modern to the trained eye. Is it possible multiple civilizations scattered across deserts and jungles once shared access to a rudimentary form of electricity? If so, where did it come from? Because this level of experimentation doesn't emerge in isolation. It requires knowledge, intent, and, most unsettling of all, a source. Whispered legends of forbidden sparks. Some Mesopotamian myths speak of the gods descending from the heavens with weapons that roared like thunder and lit the sky like fire. But could these stories be distorted memories of something else? Something real? In the Epic of Gilgamesh, there are references to divine tools that glow, hum, and burn without flame. Scholars call these metaphors. But then again, we once called the idea of 2,000-year-old batteries impossible too. And if ancient people had access to a primitive power source, even briefly, did they discover it by accident? Or was it given to them by whom? That's where this theory takes a darker turn. Ancient knowledge. Abruptly erased. The Baghdad battery was not a one-off discovery. Similar artifacts with suspiciously electrical-like components have been found in other sites, but most are either dismissed or kept out of public display. Why? Because they don't fit the timeline. If the Baghdad battery is real and functional, it forces a rewrite of history. It suggests either a lost technological civilization or outside intervention. And not everyone is comfortable with that. Even Koenig's original findings were largely ignored or buried for decades. No formal testing was done until long after his death. And today, the original artifact is held quietly at the National Museum of Iraq, rarely discussed, barely acknowledged. In fact, after the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, the museum was looted. Countless artifacts vanished. The Baghdad battery was among them, presumed stolen. But then something strange happened. In 2005, it reappeared in museum custody, returned by anonymous sources. No explanation, no suspects, no interviews, just back. Why was it stolen to be studied or silenced? And why does this ancient object, once dismissed as a curiosity, now sit locked behind glass, carefully unpowered, its strange potential forever untested? Is it because no one wants to know? Or because someone already does, power from the past? Or, beyond skeptics, argue the Baghdad battery might have simply stored sacred scrolls or been a container for incense? But why embed copper and iron? Why seal it with bitumen, a clear insulator? Too many coincidences, too many dismissals. And a final eerie note: the jar's components, copper, iron, acidic fluid, are basic materials found in nature, which means the ability to generate electricity might be far older than 2,000 years. What if these batteries weren't invented by the ancients? What if they were recreated from something they had once seen? What if, and it's a question few dare to ask, the Baghdad battery wasn't a one-off artifact at all, but a small piece of a much larger, long-lost technology that was never theirs to begin with? And if that technology was gifted or left behind by something not of this world, then where else might traces of it be hiding? The answer may lie not in the Middle East, but drawn across the desert in a place only visible from the sky, in lines no human hand could have drawn alone. 3. Nazca Lines, landing strips for the gods. From the air, they stretch across the Peruvian desert like ancient blueprints, vast lines, spirals, and animal shapes etched into the earth. Some span hundreds of meters. Others form perfect geometric angles that seem impossible to create without flight. Together, they form one of the most baffling enigmas of the ancient world, the Nazca Lines. To the casual observer, they appear beautiful, maybe symbolic. But to those who've studied their precision size and eerie placement, another theory emerges. A theory dismissed by mainstream scholars, but whispered in corners of the unexplained. Were these lines designed for something or someone in the sky? A view you were never meant to see. Located in the arid pampas of southern Peru, the Nazca Lines were first spotted from above in the 1920s by pilots flying early mail routes over the Andes. What they saw from the sky left them speechless. Enormous depictions of hummingbirds, monkeys, spiders, and more, some as large as 4 football fields. Here's the problem: the Nazca civilization had no known flying technology. These geoglyphs were etched into the ground between 500 BCE and 500 CE, long before the hot air balloon, let alone airplanes. From the ground, many of the figures are completely unrecognizable. You have to ascend hundreds of feet before their shapes become clear. So the question is obvious and dangerous. Who were these meant for why create something you can't even see? Unless the intended viewer wasn't on the ground. Engineering beyond belief. Creating the Nazca lines wasn't just an artistic endeavor, it was an engineering feat. The figures are formed by removing the top layer of dark oxidized pebbles to reveal the lighter-colored soil beneath. That sounds simple until you consider that some of the lines are perfectly straight for dozens of kilometers across uneven terrain and hillsides. Even with modern equipment, plotting a straight line for that distance would require laser surveying. But the Nazca had no lenses, no wheels, no surveying tools, officially. Then how researchers have attempted to recreate the drawings with wooden stakes and string. But the results have been crudely imperfect, nothing approaching the breathtaking symmetry of the originals. So either the Nazca had a level of geometric knowledge far beyond what we credit them for, or they were working from a perspective the official record can't explain. Were they copying what they saw, or building something they believed would be seen? That's where things get unsettling. The runway theory. Some of the lines, forget the shapes for a moment, look nothing like art. They are long, flat, perfectly leveled strips of land stretching across the desert. They don't point to stars or solstices. They don't depict animals or myths. They look like runways. Erich von Däniken, often maligned but rarely ignored, was one of the first to propose the idea. What if these were landing zones for spacecraft? Skeptical. Consider this. The Nazca Desert is one of the driest places on Earth. It never rains, which means the surface is nearly unchanged since the lines were made. If someone needed a permanent visual marker, this would be the perfect canvas. The area is filled with straight, elongated tracks that suddenly stop, as if marking acceleration or deceleration paths, a hallmark of runways. No known Nazca structures exist to house massive rituals or processions that would use such features. So what were they for unless they weren't built for the Nazca at all? Unless the Nazca were the laborers, not the architects. Legends of the sky beings. Local Andean mythology speaks of gods who came from the sky beings with large eyes and glowing skin who taught agriculture, astronomy, and building. One of them, Viracocha, is described as a tall figure who walked among the stars. To Western academics, these are just symbolic myths. But to ancient astronaut theorists, these are historical accounts told in the only language the locals had metaphor. Could it be that the Nazca believed the sky gods were watching, that they carved these symbols into the earth as messages offerings or navigation aids? And what about the timing? Around the same period that the Nazca lines were created, other megalithic sites, like Tiahuanaco in Bolivia and Teotihuacan in Mexico, were also undergoing massive, unexplained construction projects, many with celestial alignments and aviation-like layouts. Is it just coincidence, or evidence of a shared influence, an influence from above? The silence of academia. Despite decades of research, no one has been able to offer a fully convincing explanation for the lines. Theories range from irrigation maps to astronomical calendars, but none address the obvious: you have to fly to see them. And yet mainstream archaeology continues to avoid the flight-based question entirely. Why could it be that admitting the lines were meant to be viewed from the sky opens a door? They're unwilling to walk through a door that leads to a darker conclusion, that sometime in the distant past, our skies were not empty. That beings who could fly in crafts we can't explain once visited Earth, and may have expected something in return. What were they waiting for? The Nazca lines remain one of the most well-preserved mysteries on Earth, untouched by time, immune to weather, and rich with unanswered questions. If they were truly messages to the gods, what did those gods say in return? Or worse, what if the lines were instructions, coordinates, maps, a welcome mat for something scheduled to return? And if the Nazca were visited from the skies, then maybe they weren't the only ones. Half a world away, a mysterious machine was pulled from a shipwreck an object so advanced it shouldn't exist. But it does, and its implications are far more terrifying than anyone imagined. Chapter 4. The Antikythera Mechanism's Alien Precision. In 1901, sponge divers exploring a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of the tiny Greek island of Antikythera made a discovery that would change history and baffle science for over a century. Amid a pile of bronze statues and amphorae, they uncovered something that shouldn't have existed. Not then, not even close. A corroded chunk of metal fused into rock seemingly unremarkable until one archaeologist noticed something strange, tiny gear teeth precisely carved embedded in the mass. What they had found wasn't a statue. It was a machine. And not just any machine. It would become known as the Antikythera Mechanism, an object so advanced, so mathematically perfect, that some believe it was either built by a lost civilization or guided by something not of this earth. An impossible invention. After decades of careful X-ray imaging, 3D modeling, and analysis, researchers determined the Antikythera Mechanism is an analog computer capable of calculating the positions of the sun-moon planets, lunar phases, and even eclipses. Estimated to be from around 150 BCE, it predates any known comparable device by over 1,000 years. Let that sink in. This was an object built with precision gear trains, differential gearing, and astronomical prediction algorithms, all concepts that wouldn't officially enter Western science until the 14th to 16th centuries. Some of its gears have teeth no larger than 0.5 millimeter, with angles perfectly cut to interlock across 30 separate wheels. To replicate it today would require a trained watchmaker and advanced machinery. So how did an ancient civilization supposedly armed with bronze chisels and parchment create such intricate miniature engineering? Mainstream historians shrug and call it a one-off anomaly. But anomalies don't build themselves. Was it a fragment of lost knowledge? Here's where things start to unravel. The Antikythera Mechanism wasn't just built, it was designed by someone who understood orbital mechanics. Its ability to predict eclipses, including Saros cycles and lunar anomalies, implies a deep knowledge of celestial resonance and planetary motion. But that kind of data takes centuries to observe and record. Who gathered it? One theory. The mechanism is a copy based on something far older, a remnant of an even earlier, more advanced culture, perhaps Atlantis, Lemuria, or another lost civilization wiped clean by cataclysm. But there's another theory, a darker one. What if it wasn't based on earthbound data at all? What if the machine was built with help? Help from a mind or a source not entirely human. An ancient interface. Take a closer look at the device. It wasn't just meant to be watched, it was meant to be interacted with. It has dials, input, knobs, indicators, and even inscriptions that suggest it was meant to teach or communicate complex information. But to whom ancient Greeks were brilliant, no question. But even their own writings don't mention anything like the mechanism. Archimedes, Ptolemy, and Hipparchus never describe a device this detailed. It appears out of nowhere, once, and never again. That's not how innovation works, unless it was deliberately hidden. Or worse, never meant to be found. Missing pieces, missing purpose. Here's a disturbing fact: the device recovered from the Antikythera wreck is incomplete. Researchers believe it originally contained 37 gears, possibly more, yet only a portion has been recovered. Some components are missing entirely. Why? Was it destroyed in the wreck? Or did someone perhaps long ago remove certain parts before it ever sank? There's evidence the ship was carrying loot from a major city, perhaps stolen, perhaps relocated. Was the Antikythera mechanism being smuggled, hidden from a conquering force, or from the public? What would the world look like if that knowledge had survived? If the Renaissance had begun 1,000 years earlier, who or what had a vested interest in stopping that whispers from the deep? In recent years, divers and submersibles have returned to the Antikythera site with better tools. New artifacts have been found, but still no complete mechanism, no matching machine. But something else has emerged. Strange electromagnetic readings, brief malfunctions in remote-operated equipment near the wreck site, localized compass disruptions that resemble interference patterns, all unconfirmed, all undocumented by official sources. And yet some researchers claim there's something else on the seafloor. Something not made of bronze or wood. Something sealed, buried, and quietly avoided in public reports. But no one's talking. Because if another device, another impossibly advanced machine is lying beneath the waves, it raises one question no one is ready to answer. Where did these machines come from? And how many more are still hidden? Machines of the gods. Skeptics insist the Antikythera mechanism is proof that ancient humans were smarter than we give them credit for a one-time marvel by an unknown genius. But even if that's true, it leaves a gaping hole. Where did that genius go? Why did no one build another? Why did the technology vanish for 1,000 years? Or was it taken? Hidden, suppressed. We are left with a device that shouldn't exist, designed by someone we cannot name for a purpose we still don't understand, using knowledge we still struggle to comprehend. Was it a calendar, a teaching tool, or something else entirely? Something left behind? Or left on purpose? And if the Antikythera mechanism is just one forgotten machine, what other devices buried in sandstone and sea might still be ticking, waiting to be rediscovered, waiting to awaken? Because across the globe, another artifact has been found, one made of stone, not metal, but etched with such impossible accuracy that some believe it may be a map of the Earth as seen from space. 5. Tiahuanaco's impossible stonework. High in the Bolivian Andes, over 12,000 feet above sea level, stands one of the most enigmatic ruins in the world, a site shrouded in silence, mystery, and granite. Tiahuanaco. To official archaeology, it's the ceremonial center of a pre-Incan culture, a relic from around 500 CE. But when you walk among its megalithic blocks, some weighing over 130 tons, carved with laser-like precision, positioned as if by invisible hands, the questions begin to pile up. Who built this? How did they move these stones? And why do so many features at Tiahuanaco appear engineered? Because this isn't just stonework. This is something else entirely. A city that predates civilization. Conventional timelines date the rise of Tiahuanaco to about 1,500 years ago, but multiple researchers, including astronomer Arthur Poznański in the early 20th century, suggested something far older. By analyzing the astronomical alignments of the site's gateways and walls, Poznański estimated its construction to date as far back as 15,000 BCE, deep into the last ice age, long before agriculture was supposed to exist in the region. His findings were dismissed by mainstream academia, but the math remains. If the sun aligns through the site's central axis, only as it did 17,000 years ago, who were the people tracking celestial movements before history began? And how did they carve stone so precisely, stones that shouldn't exist? The structures at Tiahuanaco are composed primarily of andesite and red sandstone materials incredibly difficult to shape, especially with primitive tools. Yet the surfaces of many blocks are polished flat with angles and joints that suggest machine-grade cutting. Some corners are beveled. Some stones feature internal grooves, rectangular drill holes, and metal clamps, remnants of a technology long lost. These clamps are made of an unknown copper-arsenic-nickel alloy, not typical of pre-Columbian metallurgy. To this day, no one has convincingly demonstrated how these stones were transported. The red sandstone is believed to have come from 10 miles away, the andesite from over 50 miles across mountainous terrain. How did they move stones heavier than a modern diesel locomotive? Over mountains, without wheels, unless the builders weren't working with ropes and logs, but with something else. Something we no longer possess. Precision beyond prehistory. Walk past the ruins of Pumapunku, a subcomplex of Tiahuanaco, and you'll see something even stranger: H-shaped blocks that interlock like advanced puzzle pieces. They weren't stacked. They were engineered, each stone slotting into another with exact tolerances. Some have claimed that the precision of the right angles, the flatness of the cuts, and the uniformity of design resemble prefabricated construction, the same way modern modular buildings are made. Except these modules were made of volcanic rock, by people with no written language, no metal tools, and according to mainstream thought, no advanced knowledge. So, which is more likely that this civilization invented a one-time only burst of high technology and forgot it immediately, or that they were shown how to do this by someone or something else. Gods with tools. Local legend speaks of Viracocha, the bearded god who emerged from Lake Titicaca after a great flood, bringing wisdom and design. He taught the people how to build and then vanished into the sea. Viracocha, it's said, walked the earth with giants and commanded power over stone, water, and air. Myth or memory? We've seen this pattern before, gods descending from the sky, offering knowledge and disappearing. But what if gods was just a misunderstood word for visitors? Visitors who demonstrated advanced technology. Visitors who left behind a workshop of megaliths. And if Tiahuanaco was their classroom, what was their lesson? Or was it a base acoustic anomalies and magnetism? Modern researchers have noted something else: a pattern of electromagnetic anomalies in and around the site. Compass needles behave erratically. Animals avoid certain stones. Some parts of the complex produce echoes that defy geometry, suggesting intentional acoustic design. Why would an ancient people care about sound resonance, about magnetic fields? Or did they know or witness that these forces could interact with the stone in ways we no longer understand? Some believe the stones were softened using sound frequencies or chemicals, allowing them to be shaped as if they were clay, a lost technique, or a borrowed one. And why do similar acoustic features appear at other megalithic sites across the world, like Egypt, Malta, and Cambodia? Coincidence or coordination, a global pattern? The more we learn about Tiahuanaco, the less isolated it seems. The same impossible cuts appear in ancient temples in Egypt. The same H-shaped interlocks are found in Turkey's Göbekli Tepe. The same metal clamps turn up in India. These civilizations were never supposed to have contacted one another. So how did they share design principles, materials, and even myths, unless they were taught? Unless they were part of a global project, or under the influence of the same non-human architects. Suppressed or forgotten today, Tiahuanaco is treated as a tourist attraction, a ruin flattened by time. But very little excavation is actually done. Less than 10% of the site is visible. Most of it remains buried beneath the high-altitude soil untouched. Why is it simply budget and bureaucracy? Or is there something below something that, if found, would rewrite everything? Because satellite imagery shows subsurface structures beneath Tiahuanaco chambers, walls, even tunnels too geometrically aligned to be natural. And local legends whisper of sealed vaults containing golden artifacts, and machines that once harnessed energy from the sky. Ancient superstition, or ancient memory, one that was deliberately erased. What was Tiahuanaco? Really, a temple, a city, a machine, or something far more terrifying: a beacon, a relay, a launch pad. Whatever it was, it stood at the roof of the world where the air is thin and the stars feel closer. A place where gods were said to walk. A place no one can explain. And Tiahuanaco is not alone. Because thousands of miles away in the icy corridors of Antarctica, another mystery hides beneath the ice. A shape seen only by radar, too symmetrical, too perfect to be natural. But the government won't talk about it. What if history isn't what we've been told? What if the truth was buried literally? Like, subscribe and share if you're ready to dig deeper, because some secrets weren't lost. They were hidden on purpose.